Oh hey, how does sushi sound tonight? Oh, Soap, you so crazy. Put it up there. Yeah. Hello? A disgrace and embarrassment to YouTube? Besmirch my status as a wrestling critic? Is this some kind of joke? Well, if this is true, it could ruin me. Alright, fine, alright. I'll be right there.
Okay, V, what's up?
Hey Brian, it's time for our long overdue crossover.
Wait. What? No. What about that stuff you said on the phone?
Oh, that? Yeah, no, I made that up. So you want to talk about Kurt Angle?
Yeah. This one's gonna hurt me. Sure, let's talk about Kurt Angle. In short, he is one of the best performers in the history of the business. A tremendous athlete, a gifted entertainer, and one of the greatest world champs WWE and TNA ever had. The one issue I had with him as a wrestler was... I'm not sure how to put this.
What possible problem could you have had with Kurt Angle? Come on, let's hear it.
Well, it's just after a certain point, I found a lot of his heel work to be a little ridiculous.
Ooh, what do you mean?
Well, first we have to go back to the beginning. Debuting for the WWF at Survivor Series 99, he played the oblivious heel who thinks he's a face, and he did it really well. Do you know what he had to do at first to get heat? He talked about how awesome he was. That was it.
You do not boo Olympic gold medals. I'm the best in the world. I came here for you.
And don't forget, they also paired him with Bob Backlund for a while. Quite a resume for Mr. Backlund as a manager. Kurt Angle in 2000, Senshi in 2007, Darren Young in 2016. Nope, I don't see anybody sticking out like a sore thumb at all. But we also have to talk about the most heelish thing that Kurt Angle's ever done. Teach abstinence to kids.
I would like to talk to you tonight about something that gives your Olympic hero great joy. The joy of celibacy.
Gotta love wrestling. For the first couple of years, this kind of harmless healing was pretty much Kurt in a nutshell, mocking local sports teams, or offering The Undertaker a moped as a peace offering, or wearing a silly cowboy hat, that sort of thing. In the summer of 2000, Angle embarked on what was, at the time, his most high-profile storyline when he was involved in a love triangle with Stephanie McMahon and her husband Triple H. The high point of the whole angle was when Kurt planted a big ol' smooch on a semi-conscious Stephanie.
If they don't bring this up for their build at WrestleMania, I will be sorely disappointed. But just when things were getting good, the storyline died at Unforgiven, when Stephanie picked her side and Triple H defeated Kurt. So why did it get dropped so abruptly? Well, according to legend, Triple H put the kibosh on it himself, stating that it wasn't believable that Stephanie would ever leave him for a nerd like Kurt.
Yes, believability in wrestling it's so crucial. Let's hope Triple H remembers it the next time he's booked to shoot Kane in the face with a flamethrower while disguised as Goldust, or the next time he humps a mannequin while disguised as Kane.
By 2004, Kurt's character was far more intense than before. Whether he was a face or a heel, gone were the days of goofy promos and a complete lack of self-awareness. And in its place was someone much more driven and violent. Like this classic moment on SmackDown when he viciously assaulted Eddie Guerrero, who had already been handcuffed. Wow, a white dude beating up on a minority in handcuffs? That's just wrong.
Wait, that sounds like something I would say. I thought you were called the social injustice warrior.
It worked in the moment, Brian.
So by now, Kurt had become more of a badass, making him even more of a legitimate threat than he already was. Things were going great. But then the writers over on SmackDown asked, how can we make things weird?
Show's got Jim-Rack by the throat.
Sure does.
Oh my!
In September of '04, as part of the build to their match at No Mercy, Angle knocked out the Big Show with a damn tranquilizer gun. Certainly creative. Big Show later said he pitched the idea himself as an excuse to shave off his thinning hair, after seeing footage of a gorilla getting the same treatment. But even something as overthought as this didn't go off without error.
Did it hurt? It hurt. Because you're only supposed to pump the gun once. You pumped it 8 times, you OCD freak.
What a waste of a perfectly good tranq dart. You want to put the Big Show to sleep? Have him watch one of his own matches.
Yeah, that or a Brian Zane match.
Yeah, totally. Dick.
Gotta admit, that image of Angle shaving Show's head looks awfully familiar.
In the spring of 2005, things got even stranger for Kurt. At one point, he left Joy Giovanni bound and gagged in the back of JBL's limo, supposedly to frame the wrestling god, but it was later revealed they were in on it together. Just weeks later, he got into a feud with Booker T and the debuting Sharmell. Much like his program with Triple H in 2000, Angle was pining for another man's wife. But unlike in 2000, Kurt got especially perverted.
You're gonna have to go home with that gutter slut.
She fondled my privates.
Kurt Angle with a roll-up here.
I want to have sex with your wife. That kind of bestiality sex.
And this is what abstinence-only education does for you kids.
Now, there are a couple of ways you can interpret Kurt's infamous line. One, it's possible the writers confused the word bestiality as a way to describe sex that's so passionate it's like you're acting like wild animals. Or two, whoever wrote this promo basically called Sharmell a wild animal. But it couldn't have been a mistake because SmackDown was a taped show and they could have gone back and reshot the promo to get the wording right. Not only that, they reused that very clip in the hype package for the pay-per-view match. So which is it? Stupid or evil? Oh yeah, then there's this stuff which is equally gross.
Kinda crazy to think that he'd end up in the Hall of Fame after that.
Well, there is a precedent.
Kurt was nice enough to take time out of his busy schedule of trying to rape women to go nuts on other people too. Take for instance his attack on Taz, just before the first ever ECW One Night Stand. Angle issued Taz an ultimatum to choose a side. When Taz stood his ground, Angle responded.
Put the damn chair down!
That's for the Rumble in Madison Square Garden, asshole!
By this point, Taz was already retired due to injuries, so he was pretty much harmless. And in that brief moment, Kurt was as vicious as I'd ever seen him. It was the equivalent of Triple H breaking Jim Ross's arm a few years earlier. It really added legitimacy to his hatred for ECW. So it's only natural that he'd become an ECW guy about a year later.
Continuity. Who needs it? Kurt had been a bad guy plenty before this, but never with this level of obsession and animosity and mental instability. It was a huge leap from wearing a silly wig to hide his freshly shaven head. But at least this run gave him the experience necessary to play a sexually depraved serial killer in the movie Endgame. 2005 continued to be a banner year for Cuckoo Cray Cray Kurt as he was placed in a championship feud with John Cena, the same man who famously debuted against the Olympic hero 3 years earlier. WWE had booked themselves into a corner. By now, the Super Cena experiment was in full swing and fans were already getting tired of it. Meanwhile, despite all the tranquilizing, head shaving, and wife humping, they still couldn't get the fans to boo Kurt on a consistent basis. It was obvious this program was meant to legitimize Cena as a main event player, but without fan support for John, the feud would tank. The company had to do something to get the fans to boo Kurt, so finally they asked themselves the brave question, what if we put him with a brown dude?
Ah yes, Daivari. Formerly Muhammad Hassan's sidekick, Daivari spent the next couple of years as a creative stopgap for the company, managing anyone who needed a good heel boost, from Angle to Mark Henry to the Great Khali. But unlike all those other examples, Daivari hardly ever spoke for Kurt in promos. Kurt still did most of the talking. Daivari was basically there to assure fans that Kurt was a bad guy.
Gotta love wrestling!
The feud was totally one-sided, as Cena won almost all of their battles and retained the title against Kurt every single time. And what a shock, it did not help Cena standing with the fans. You'd think this would have taught them a lesson, but no. No. Just no. At New Year's Revolution 2006, Kurt went all out and said everything he possibly could in order to get the fans to boo him.
And if I would go back in time, the one person in history I'd like to make tap out would have to be Jesus.
Who do you ever beat?
Good luck with that, Kurt. He had way more important things on his plate, like training his father for his big match at Backlash.
Truth be told, I'm not a very big fan of the black people.
You sure about that one, Kurt? Let's just move on to the next chapter in Kurt's career. In the summer of '06, Angle was granted an early release from his WWE contract after refusing to go to rehab for his painkiller addiction. Later that year, he debuted for TNA and was immediately put in a program with Samoa Joe. This feud lasted for several months and was frequently punctuated with Angle's mistreatment of women. First, in an attempt to get a rematch with Joe, he physically threatened SoCal Val after putting Don West in the ankle lock.
Samoa Joe!
He's got his foot on her hair!
Has it come to this?
Then, Angle put Samoa Joe's girlfriend in the ankle lock after finally getting the rematch he wanted at Final Resolution.
Don't even try to come here. By the time you get here, the is toast.
Finally, and perhaps most importantly, his months-long obsession with Joe led him to mistreat and neglect his wife, Karen.
Karen, I told you for the last time. As long as there's a me and Joe, there can't be a me and you.
Wow, if he keeps up that treatment, next thing you know, they're gonna get a Kurt would mellow out after this phase and spend a total of 8 years with TNA, becoming a multiple-time world champion, the leader of the main event mafia, and even a kayfabe authority figure, before re-signing with WWE last year and being inducted into their Hall of Fame. And now you know the rest of the story. So Brian, I've got to ask, why did we spend so much time talking about all the heelish things that Kurt's done in his career when there's been plenty of other workers who've done the same or if not worse? I mean, what makes Kurt so special?
I think because for a lot of fans, we all still remember Kurt as this wholesome, howdy-doody character who couldn't understand why the fans were booing him. He eventually embraced his more heelish side, but then he went into a completely different extreme, and after a while just went into Bonkersville territory. Whenever I saw Kurt shoot a tranquilizer gun or assault a woman, all I could think was, how could this be the same guy who wore the dopey crown and robe, who attacked the Alliance with a milk truck? How can the guy who walked out on an ECW show after seeing Raven crucify the Sandman be on board with all this? It's hard for me to reconcile those two periods. I understand that wrestlers need to evolve in order to stay relevant, and I'll admit that being a predator is a great way to get heat, but for a while that's all he was doing. It's almost like he was being typecast.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. But I think that there's one thing that you're forgetting.
What's that?
You remember that promo that he was cutting a little bit earlier, you know, about the troops and Jesus and black people? Yeah, well, here's how that promo ended.
The point is, I can say anything I want to these idiots, and they'll still cheer for me.
That's the whole thing with him. Angle is that good of a wrestler, that good of a character, that good of a performer, that fans have no choice but to respect him. He could kill a kitten in the ring, but he'd be cheered by the majority of fans within 2 weeks. And that's because he definitely doesn't suck.
I don't suck. I don't suck.
Well, you certainly have a point, Vee. I mean, after a while, some wrestlers were like Teflon to bad writing, and as despicable and vile as he was portrayed for a while, Kurt is one of those guys.
Well, Brian, thanks for having me on your channel this time. It's been a lot of fun, but if you'll excuse me, I gotta go spend some quality time with my son.
Oh wait, you have a son? I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, you didn't know?
Well, the white women that.
Huh. No one's buying that.
Focus, get up, don't get up, I'll never let up. Ferocious, I'm fed up, dismissing the competition. You're hopeless, I'll trash their ambition. Listen, you want a class on tradition? On one condition, forget the best of the century. Talk about the best of all time, you better mention me. Essentially, I'm the best there's ever gonna be. I hold my ground, you never take it from under me. Don't front of me, it's gonna be trouble. I hit you so many times, you see triple or double instead of one of me. I got more heart.